was delivered to Japanese police. That is a very interesting case because that is generally considered the first real attack, terrorist attacks against the SCADA networks. A fellow of the name Witold Boden has a grudge against the Marochisshire municipality, and he worked there and he obtained software which was used for controlling sewage system, and he managed to open the floodgates and release enormous amount of sewage to the nearby river. Well, Australian police was quite efficient. He was caught. He was caught red-handed because they find software which he used to launch this attack. He was sent to for 2 years. Now, that I believe you know. This is in 1999 at the University of Minnesota was the first recorded DDoS attack. And a year later, a series of attacks happens. It was done by a chap of the pseudonym Mafia Boy, and he was caught because he simply, well, telling his friends how great he was. The losses were quite substantial. If you calculate how many dollars per minute Amazon.com earns, then if they are out of circulation for an hour, it's easy to calculate the amount of losses, and similar other companies. Now, what is interesting is to notice that if you are following those attacks, is the fact that in any time in the history when there is some rise of conflict between various nation or group of nation, immediately that sort of a conflict is reflected by software or internet attacks against the other side. So Israeli versus Palestinians, especially in this period around the year 2000 and 2001, there was a number of attacks launched by both sides, of course, against the other side. Well, I'm not going to read exactly what is it. You can read it yourself. But it was in that particular text is the emphasis is on the Palestinian side attacking Israelis, but there was exactly the opposite activities. When Chinese shoot the American plane near the coast, there was a similar wave of attacks from both sides. Kashmir conflict for Kosovo, all that was reflected in the indefinitely increase of cyber attacks between those factions. Now, yesterday morning, Sanjay was mentioning this Estonia case. Well, I would like to come to this case a bit more detailed way, because this is a quite significant case in the history of cybercrime, cyber terrorism, cyber warfare. Now, when we look on this, we must look on the history of Estonia, what happens over there, because without knowledge of that, it'd be very difficult to understand what happened in 2007. So, a brief history of that part of the world for the last 50 years. Before the Second World War, Estonia existed as an independent country. Then it was invaded by Germans, and then soon after was taken over by Russians. Now, the Estonia generally is rather based on the more or less Western Europe rather than, let's say, Eastern Europe. So for Russians and Russia accepted, or rather introduced Estonia as one of the republic. Just during the last phase of the Second World War, at the territory of Estonia, there were a lot of substantial military activities between Russian troops and